Hello everybody and welcome back to the Prognard. I am your host Jacob Williams. So doing another Armchair General segment on my favorite game of this year, Star Wars Rebellion. And unlike my last video on this game, the math and stuff that we're going to look at is going to be a little more simple than the last one. Alright? So, one of the reasons why I love this game is because it's highly thematic. It lets players really live or play through their favorite moments from all of the original Star Wars movies. So what we're going to look at in this video is the probability of the rebels being able to blow up the Death Star. Alright? But before I get into that, I kind of want to take a little tangent here and talk about some of my systems for storage that I use with this game. And it probably doesn't really belong in an Armchair General segment, but I'm probably not going to shoot a Rebellion video for a while. So I wanted to take this opportunity and kind of show some of the things that I do with my setup. Alright, so I'm going to turn the camera over here. So these are the storage bins I use to organize my game. I came up with this before any of the fancy inserts came out for this game, as I was an early adopter. So I'm sure there could be better storage solutions, but this is what I go with. These are Plano 3500 organizers, and I have them divided up, for the most part, one bin or one little compartment for each thing, but some of the things like the planetary defenses and my super star destroyers and assault shuttles had to double up due to restrictions on storage. Alright, and what I like about these is that I was able to put these labels on here to help me with setup. Now, I never use the beginner setup. I think that the only setup anyone really needs is the advanced setup. So that's what these labels help me to do. If you'll notice that these labels kind of correspond with where things are. So X-wings are kind of in the middle, and then Y-wings are next to that, rebel transports, and so on and so forth. My wife said that there was a candy company that labeled their box of chocolates this way. I forget the name that she said, but apparently I stole that idea from them. All right. Now you'll notice that there's two numbers on these boxes. If you hear some weird noises, my cat, Commander Andy, is running around down here in my basement. So don't mind him. Anyway, you'll see two numbers here divided by a slash. Okay. The first number here, or the numerator, is how many pieces I need of that unit type to start the game. Okay, so, you know, in the setup for Rebels, you get 2 X-wings, 2 Y-wings, 1 Corvette, 0 Moncals, 1 transport, 6 troopers, 2 airspeeders. You know, then you get things for the Empire. All right, and then the number to the right is, or in the denominator, is the number of units total that the game comes with. See, look at that. Commander Andy is already over the playing field. Hold on, let me get Commander Andy off the table. The joy of cat ownership, huh? Okay, so yeah, this is the amount of parts I should have in inventory. Alright, and with a game where exact component counts matter, yeah, I think it's very important to keep track of the inventory, and I find myself often just double checking my pieces, make sure I haven't dropped any on the floor, or anything like that. I'm considering getting a second copy of this game to have as a parts copy. Maybe it's the old car collector in me that, you know, you need to have something extra for hard to find parts. So I'm considering doing that, but haven't done it yet. I mean, for a $70 game, it's or $100 retail, you know, it's kind of hard to justify that price just for an extra copy. But I do have some archive copies of games I really like. Like I do have an archive copy of Cuba Libre and Zaya Legends of a Drift System. But anyway, let's get back to the matter at hand. Enough dinking around here. Okay, so as I explained in my last video, I'm going to try and do a little more background on these math problems before diving right into it. So in this game, the rebels will start with 14 reputation, and you know, there's a round counter. Let me tilt the camera. There's a round counter in here, and the rebels will win if they can lower their reputation. Maybe this should be thought of as bad reputation. Maybe they lower their bad reputation, which I guess represents good PR. I don't know. It doesn't make sense that when the rebels gain reputation, this marker actually decreases. And man, my cat is full of beans running around here. Anyway, rebels win if they can get this counter to be in the same spot as the round counter. So maybe a situation like that. All right. So one of the ways that the rebels do this is by completing these objective cards. Okay. The objectives will tell you how it's supposed to be played, and if you meet the conditions at the time it specifies, you can gain reputation. In this case, we're going to be talking about the Death Star plans, which is one of the rebels' best objective cards because it is worth 2 reputation points when most are only worth 1, and it eliminates a nice piece of hardware that the Empire has. Okay, so that's why this is important. So let's talk about how the rebels go about completing this objective card, which will be the mathematical analysis that we dive into. All right, if the rebels are to get this objective, Death Star plans, if you have at least 1 fighter after the space battle step, reveal this card to roll 3 dice. If you roll a hit anything, play this card and destroy a Death Star in this system, otherwise return this card to your hand. All right, so what does that mean? That means if I have a single fighter, which are these things right here, that I have set up for flare. You know, you got the classic Luke versus Vader scene at Yavin 4 in the first movie. All right, so if you have one of those survive, you get to roll 3 of these dice, and if you roll a hit anything, you'll blow up the Death Star. All right, so let's calculate what the probability is of getting one of those hit anythings on 3 dice. Now we're going to make a simplifying assumption here. We're going to assume that you win this battle. Okay, if we wanted to be super technically mathematically correct, we would calculate the probability of the Empire not getting 4 fighter kills in this combat. And to be honest, this would be really difficult because you know, you would have space combat cards from Luke and Vader that you'd have to take in. It's probably just messy. You'd probably have to do some sort of really sophisticated Monte Carlo to get that probability. But let's say you made simplifying assumptions and assume no combat cards or useless combat cards. Then you could calculate the probability of getting 4 hits and doing the complement of that, which is something we're about to look at. Then you could calculate that probability, but we're not going to worry about that in this video. Again, we're going to make the simplifying assumption that you will have at least 1 fighter left after the first round of combat. And Commander Andy, I swear to God, me and you are about to have a discrepancy if you don't stay off the game table while I'm filming. Okay, so let's actually get to the math at hand and stop dealing with Andy's shenanigans. Alright, let's move the camera over here to my notebook. Changing it up from my envelopes because I don't feel like wasting some envelopes today. Alright, so just as a reminder before we do this, we need to roll 3 dice and get at least one hit anything. And remember, there's one hit anything on this die that is 6 sides. Only one hit anything. Alright, so we know the probability on a single die of getting a hit is, oh, let's get that more in focus here. Probability of hit anything. And I should maybe try to stop looking at this through the viewfinder. There you go. Hit anything is equal to 1 out of 6. Okay? So, to calculate at least one hit, we're going to use some a special formula that I've talked about in some of my previous videos called a binomial distribution. Okay, and I talked a lot about that in my video on converting a country to Islamic rule in my Labyrinth video. So go watch that if you want to hear more about that formula. But that formula for a binomial distribution is n choose x times p to the x power times 1 minus p to the n minus x power. Okay, and I can use this in any probability distribution where I either have a success or I have a failure. Okay, so in this case we're going to count the hit anything as success and everything else as a failure. Alright, now there's 3 different outcomes when I go to roll all 3 dice. Okay, I could either get 0 hit anythings, 1 hit anything, 2 hit anythings, or 3 hit anythings. Alright, and at first glance you might think all I'm concerned with is these. So similar to my Utapau confrontation problem, you know, I would want this, or this, or this, which means I would want this, plus this, plus this. And you're not wrong. That would absolutely be a valid way to tackle this problem. But we're going to do something called the negative approach, or the complementary approach, which is we're going to take the probability that's easiest to calculate, which is this, and we're going to do 1 minus whatever the probability of getting all zeros is, because the complement of that is all this. And here I only have to do this formula once, whereas if I did this I'd have to do it 3 times and add it together. Okay, so we're going to do it the easy way. Alright, so what I said was I'm going to do 1 minus the probability of getting 0 successes. Okay, so if I do that, I'm going to draw some brackets here. I'm going to do 3 choose 0, because remember in this formula that this is the total number of dice I'm rolling, and I'm going to choose the amount of successes that I want. So I want 0 successes and I'm rolling 3 dice. And if you're unfamiliar with the mathematical choose operation, it's the button on your calculator that's generally labeled NCR. And there's some weird formula. It's something like, oh, I forget what it is. It's something like R factorial over N factorial, or sorry, what is it? It's N factorial over N minus R factorial times R factorial. I don't know. Whatever. You get the idea. It's some operation on your calculator. All right, getting back to the matter at hand. Okay, so I've got 3 choose 0. And now, remember my P is 1/6. It's the probability of getting a hit anything, or a probability of a success. Raise it to the x power, which is 0. And then I'm going to take 1 minus p, so 1 minus 1/6 is 5/6. That's going to be to the n minus x power, so it's going to be 3. All right, doing the math. 3 choose any, or anything choose 0 is 1. There's only one way to choose nothing out of a bunch of choices. Anything to the 0th power is 1. And when we have no addition or subtraction in the numerator or denominator of a fraction, we can raise the numerator and the denominator to whatever power is outside the parentheses. So that's going to be 5 cubed, which is 125, divided by 3 cubed, which is 216, which we already knew from the previous Armchair General segment. All right, anything times 1 is itself, so we're going to have 125 over 216. Don't forget to bring down my 1 minus. Now I need like denominators in order to subtract fractions, so I can convert 1 to 216 over 216. Now I know this might seem like magic, but remember, any number over itself is 1, right? So 216 divided by 216 is 1. Then I'm going to still subtract 125 over 216. All right, now what does that equal? Let's go and do some old school math here. Let's do 216 minus 125, and I apologize for that being in the shadow. All right, 6 minus 5 is 1. Bigger bottom, so better borrow. So if I borrow 1 from here, that's going to make this 11. So 11 minus 2 is 9. And then 1 minus 1 is 0. All right, so that's going to give us 91 out of 216. And converting that into a fraction, or sorry, to a decimal, that's going to give us 0.4213. And I'm just going to verify that on my calculator, which I did. Rounding up, rounding to the four places. Then if I multiply that by 100 to change it to a percentage, 42.13%. That is the probability of blowing up the Death Star in 1 round. Now, if you're lucky enough to survive 2 rounds of combat, and you try that, well, then your probability is going to go up. We could do that calculation, but I don't want to. I'll let you guys try to do that on your own. There would be an OR situation, but you'd have to subtract out the probability that you hit it on both attempts. But whatever, I'll let you guys use your math skills to figure that out. Okay, so that's the probability of a successful Death Star plans. There is one way to get this probability up even higher that's super easy. And Andy just bolted down that stairs. Cat is crazy. And no, I didn't give him catnip, if anyone's wondering. He about scared the shit out of me, to be honest. Anyway, so how can we get this probability up higher? There's one super simple way to get this probability up to 100%, which is when you're picking heroes, get Luke Skywalker or Wedge via this card. Okay? 1 in a million. Probably the best Rebel hero card in the game. The only other card that might possibly be better is Old Friend, because it lets you get a leader advantage. Alright? But this is going to be your surefire way of blowing up the Death Star, because during combat, you get to set your dice to anything you want. Okay? So when you go to roll those Death Star dice, you're just like, suck it. QED, bitches. That just happened. Alright? So there you go. There's a little bit of mathematics behind Star Wars Rebellion. Let's outro on these guys. So, let me get the camera straight. That's the probability of blowing up the Death Star and concluding this epic confrontation between father and son. I hope you enjoyed this video. And now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go wring my cat's neck. Not really. Please don't report me to Animal Services. Take care.